everyone. Welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Lori, and I am joined today by Shannon, Heather, and Dave, who you've met on our previous episodes of the DBT Skills series, Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills. As a reminder, none of us are clinicians. We are going through this book together, the DBT for Life book by Diana Partington, and we are just talking about our own lived experience using the skills, not using the skills, how they've kind of showed up in our lives and how they've benefited us if they have. And we are shockingly almost done this series, which is like kind of sad because there's only 2 chapters left. And then at the end of the series, we're going to be talking to Diana again as a group. So yeah, excited about that. That'll come out in a few weeks. This episode, chapter 16, if you're following along with us in the book, we're on page 263. And this skill is about pushing away and distracting with thought. So as you know, every chapter of this book starts with a story. So Shannon is going to summarize the story for us, and then we'll get started.
Okay. So Kailani is a primary school teacher in Hawaii, and she has a bit of a love-hate relationship with the dating apps. She deleted them in frustration, but then reinstalled them when she got lonely. She had met a guy called Stephen, who was a PhD student who was visiting Hawaii. And although she usually tried to avoid people who were travelling, he was quite charming and respectful and drew her in. As they were chatting, their connection grew, and Kailani found herself fantasizing about their future, sort of caught between excitement and caution. And she worried about the unhealthy romanticizing that she was doing around their relationship. So she consulted her therapist, who advised her to schedule a daily 15-minute appointment with herself to focus on her thoughts around Stephen, which would then free her mind up to think about other things during the day. She also got a bit of guidance on maintaining boundaries and limiting texting and preparing for the possibility of disappointment. When they had their first date, Kailani devised a cope ahead strategy. So she would take things slow. She didn't shave her legs and she wore unflattering underwear, but the date went exceptionally well. And Stephen, after a couple of hours of hanging out together, Stephen invited her back to his place to watch a movie. She really wanted to go, but she realised that her plan had backfired. So she bought a cheap razor on the way to his house and made up a bit of an excuse about could she have a shower because it had been a really hot day. She nicked her legs in the shower, and so she was bleeding. She was in a panic because there was blood all through his bathroom. She tried to clean up the mess and put her ugly Copahead underwear into her handbag before she got dressed and covered the cuts on her legs with some little dots of toilet paper. So despite that, everything went well, and the movie led to wine, which led to sex, and they had a great time. But when it was all over and Stephen turned on the lights, there was a little trail of scattered bloody toilet paper in the bedroom and down the hallway and in the bed. And she had a huge shame spiral, went into overwhelming distress. She took off, headed home. She felt the urge to self-harm. She did resist that and the desire to then blow up his phone with thousands of messages trying to explain and looking for validation. And she used some DBT skills to kind of cope in that moment. She checked the facts, considered the worst case scenario, reminded herself that even if he ghosted her or said something mean, that it would hurt, but within a day or 2 it might start to feel better, and even a little bit down the track she might be able to laugh about it with her friends. But she decided that she would set herself a worry appointment for 5 p.m. the following Tuesday and distracted herself I think she decided to list her students' names in alphabetical order when those intrusive thoughts came in. But before the appointment happened, Stephen texted. They made light of it, and he said everything was fine. The relationship did fade out, but she kind of learned a valuable lesson that postponing worry allowed her to navigate that distress without acting impulsively and making things worse.
That was such a good summary. Thanks so much, Shannon. I really loved this story for a couple of reasons. One, because it didn't end in like they lived happily ever after, which I felt like was so refreshing in that like we all have such like high expectations, and then like that just makes things worse. And so for the story to just end in like and it fizzled out and it was fine is so realistic. Also, I've definitely done the like don't shave before you go on a date so that you have to not do anything. So I was like, yep, been there. How did everybody else feel about this story? Did it resonate with you?
There was a lot of stuff in there that I was like, oh girl, I have been there.
Right.
There was some parts that really stressed me out because I could feel her panic in that feeling, and not just in relation to dates, but in relation to any time where you feel like you have really embarrassed yourself, or you've said something that might have hurt someone, and then that panic that sets in and you leave, and then your mind just goes over and over and over the same thing, and you tend to make it worse. And then once you're sort of outside that window of tolerance around that particular issue, you just tend to amplify what, when you look back at it, is quite a manageable thing.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. How about you, Heather?
I was just going to say that I really relate to, essentially, it's like the path to having a favorite person is what they were on and trying to prevent. And it's just so relatable that you can get so involved with this possible love interest. It's not even a relationship yet, and you obsess, and it's like your body starts feeling like maybe this is going to be my new favorite person, and you're clinging on to that because it gives you such, I don't know if adrenaline is the word, but that satisfying feeling that having a favorite person gives you, even though it's so toxic.
Yeah, it's like the best feeling that leads to the absolute
To the
worst
worst.
opportunity or worst stuff ever.
It feels like a drug.
It is. I truly, like, it really does feel that way. And Heather, I can cut this if you don't want to talk about it, but you are in an open relationship, right?
Somewhat. Okay, so we're swingers.
Oh, okay. So does that favorite person thing come up? Like,
yes, and I do
in that context.
I'm talking about that a bit in my solo episode too. I know we were going to talk about that some, but yeah, like there's just so much opportunity for that. I make so many friends. Like I have more friends than I can spend time with because I meet so many people and they're just like, we're best friends now. You're amazing. Just because they like told me I was pretty or thought I was funny one time, or like there's just so much room for positive attention. I have to really watch myself there and make plans to not let someone become that. But I've gotten pretty good at understanding when I'm on that path.
That's good. Yeah, for me, I'm like, oh my God, this is the one. And you're like, dude, you've met them for 5 minutes. Like, it's probably not the one. And I know that like when I feel that way, that's like the biggest red flag, if that makes sense. Like it like feels the most exciting, but that in itself is the biggest red flag.
It's not even as necessarily how much I think they're awesome. I'm like, they think I'm so awesome. And that I feed onto that a lot. So if someone's worshiping me, if I think they are, I'm like, okay, now you're the best thing I've ever known because you're giving me positive attention.
Interesting. Dave and Kat, how about yourselves? Does this story resonate with you? Maybe I'll go to Kat first.
I think what this reminds me of most is like future faking, with like in relationships where I'm like, this is gonna happen later, and then I can live off that even if what's actually happening is really toxic or like just not there. So I guess that's where it kind of hits for me.
I've never heard that word before, future faking. Do you like I think I know what you're talking about, but do you want to like clarify that a bit?
So like it can be something like internal talk, or it can be like in conversations with other people, with the other person. So like for me at one point it was children, or it would be buying a house, and it would either be conversations that we had about, oh yeah, that will happen, or I would be away in my head thinking that's how that's going to be, and then it just wouldn't happen.
Interesting. Yeah, so just like over reliance on like the future positive experience that you have told yourself is going to happen.
Yeah, so you're just kind of living on, oh, I can deal with this now because this is going to happen. But then that just kind of being case for years and years until like eventually I kind of stepped off that train.
Fascinating. And has anybody else heard of that concept before? No, that's a new one. Did you make that up, or is that like a thing?
No, I think I've heard it from, I think Dr. Ramani was the first place I heard that.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. That's new language. That's super helpful. And I can like totally see what you mean. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I've done that. It's just didn't have a word for it. That's really
like
cool.
You say, I've done it with like favorite people that weren't relationships as well, where it's like, oh, we're going to be running a business together or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Dave, how about yourself? Does this story resonate?
Yeah, it does. I don't know that I have a ton else to add about the story in particular. I think that when I first read this, I felt like these skills are things that I've heard about, and I was sort of thinking, well, I don't think I've ever actually used them. You know what I mean? Like they sound like a great idea, but I don't think I've actually done them. And then when I was just reading it again today, it occurred to me that lately this whole idea of pushing away is like something, this push away skill is something that I have been doing lately, and it's been really helpful. The idea that like when I'm starting to get overwhelmed by feeling upset about something, I've been able to just say to myself, there's nothing that is going to happen either way about this right now. And so rather than continue to think about it or come up with something to do right now about it, I'm just going to make a purposeful decision to set it aside. And it's actually worked. I mean, I think in the past, I don't know that would have worked. So it's one of those things that it sounds great in theory, but, I could see myself in the past deciding to do that and then 5 minutes later being right back in it. But lately I've had a lot of success with that. So
that's awesome.
There's value in giving skills a second chance, even if they didn't work at some other time in the past.
Totally. That to me, that's like the best part about this series is all of the skills that I kind of was like, yeah, whatever. And then now I'm like, oh, I'm in a completely different place in my life. And now I can actually use these better or differently. So yeah, let's go into like what the skills are themselves. So she has pushing away and distracting with thought kind of combined in this chapter. I don't know if they really have like different definitions per se. I don't think she defines them in a different way. But essentially what she's saying here is like distracting yourself from a problem to give your mind a break. And then that gives you time to use other skills. So very similar to like the stop skill in that you're just trying to like get yourself to a place where you can use other skills by not reacting right away. This is more like giving yourself time to use other skills by not just going in circles about it forever. I have a note here. I read this such a long time ago, but it says, distracting is tough for me and needs to be paired with opposite action and a reminder of the difference between distract and avoid. Because I think it's easy to just be like, oh, I'm going to distract myself forever and never deal with this actual problem. And like sometimes there's problems that we don't have to deal with, and like fair enough, then you can just distract yourself and hope that they go away. But sometimes that's not going to be feasible. I don't know about you guys, but I ruminate really bad. Dave, I know we've talked about OCD in the past. My counselor is like convinced I have OCD. The psychiatrist I saw doesn't think I do. Whatever. It doesn't even really matter to me what the label is. Either way, I have very strong thought processes that just reoccur over and over and over again. And they become like increasingly more distressing the more I think about them. And I would say like the rumination is probably the number one challenge I have with sleep, which, as we've talked about in other episodes, when my sleep gets messed up, then my mental health gets messed up, and it's this like really vicious cycle. So yeah, does everybody else have like challenges with rumination and a need for distraction, whether or not you're good at doing it or not?
I certainly do. I remember speaking to my psychologist about this, and this story reminded me about it. This analogy that she used, and she said the way that my thought patterns work. She said it's like flicking a marble into the dirt, and then it leaves that little trail, and then the next marble that you flick might be from a different angle, but because that trail's there, it runs into that track and follows the same path. And then you can flick one from the, around the corner a bit more, and at each time the marble goes down that trail, it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And so all your thoughts end up funneling into that one thing. And it was something we worked on a lot, but I had never heard of a worry appointment, like even through DBT. I think we did talk about distracting and pushing away with thought, and it was about making these lists. Don't think about this thing right now. Make some lists. The lists that Diana puts here have never really worked for me. I think I'd probably go back into mindfulness a little bit, and we'll look for things in the environment or name bird sounds that I hear or pick plants or something like that. But I'd never heard of a worry appointment before. And this is just so great. I cannot wait to use it because I have a natural tendency to probably avoid, but it's when I'm outside of that window of tolerance. So, and then I flick between that threat mode and the drive mode. So I just try and keep busy and do the things. So I'm not actually self-soothing in that. Whereas if you make this worry appointment and you can go, I can put this here and I'm going to come back to it. But then it gives you that opportunity to go into your soothe system rather than just constantly trying to distract yourself with other stuff. Then you can come back into your window of tolerance before you actually attack whatever this thing is that's putting you into your threat mode to start with.
Yeah, I loved her concept of the worry appointment as well. And like, just for clarification for those who aren't reading the book, she talks about how you can schedule time to worry about a specific thing fully so that it's not taking, you're not saying like, I'm never going to think about this. You're saying like, I'm going to think about this and worry about it at 7 p.m. tomorrow for 15 minutes. And that kind of contains the rumination, I suppose, if it works, who knows, to be able to like really give your mind a break from it for the rest of that time until 7 p.m. tomorrow. I don't know if anybody's watched the show Shrinking on Apple TV. No, it's good. I don't love it as much as most people love it, but anyways, they do a similar thing to these worry appointments with like a grief appointment, and so they basically give themselves like 15 minutes or half an hour a day or whatever to like just like fully grieve the loss of their mother and like just kind of put everything out there. And they found it helpful in that show too.
Just in combining these, like taking a time out was part of the pushing away. And that's something that I often have to do with my partner. I get escalated really quickly and he's chill. So we have to take a break. But that's when I struggle with ruminating typically. Like I'm going to go in there and only think about this thing that we're arguing about or whatever we need to fix. So seeing them combined in the distracting with thoughts, I also had never heard of a worry appointment, but I kind of saw this as a path to do like the writing part and the worry appointment part while I'm taking that break instead of ruminating and freaking out, like taking that time to like worry about it, like allowing myself the time to work through it instead of just think about that it is a problem, if that makes sense. It gave me a whole new light of how to use this skill.
I love that. That's great. Dave, how do you feel about this skill? Or is the worry appointment or just any of the different ways to distract?
It makes sense to me that the worry appointment would work, and it's something that I've heard of before. It's something I've recommended to people because it made sense to me, but I've never actually used it. I mean, it does occur to me that that one reason that I might wind up ruminating sometimes is because I don't really feel like I have permission to fully sort of look straight at something that's upsetting me. And so if I set an appointment, then implicit in that is I'm giving myself permission to fully engage with it. And so I could see that helping. I've just never actually done it. So, I'd be interested to hear from somebody who's actually tried doing this to see if it helps. To me, again, pushing away is something that I didn't really realize I was doing. And then I've been doing it with a lot of success lately. I think the other thing that it's not covered here is, I think that for me, particularly with OCD issues, there is a danger in trying to shove things out too hard. And I have found a lot of success or most of the success in this area through actively noticing what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and noticing the patterns and then stepping back from it and saying, this is what my mind does. My mind does this all the time and it's doing it again right now. And then I've found that things not only pass out of my mind in terms of ruminating, but then I also lately I've been able to find the space to actually be effective, and use that effectiveness skill and do what needs to be done, or say I'm not going to deal with this today because I don't need to, and I'm going to wait until I'm less activated, or to set it aside completely. And that's really helped. I mean, I've definitely found, I think that, Lori, I think what you said about just being really mindful of that very fuzzy boundary between distracting and avoiding is a very important one. I think that lately, when it's been working, I think that there's something that's been freed up to where this, then it's almost like the first time around, I was just so stuck on the fact that something was happening and trying to fight reality and not being in a willful state of mind, that there was no space to be effective about it. And then telling myself, this is not going to get solved tonight. Anything I do right, if I reach out to somebody or get upset at somebody, it's not going to solve the problem. And I'm noticing that my mind is feeling activated and it's engaging in, it's those marble paths the mind is just wandering down those. And so I'm not going to do that right now. And then I find that the next day, usually, just sort of naturally, solutions have been coming to me in that new space. So it's been working for me lately.
Do you find that that kind of rumination usually happens at night for you as well?
No, I mean
it's all the time.
I mean these days it tends to happen more, when I'm tired. So sometimes at night, but sometimes just in the middle of the day, just when I'm really tired. That's when it happens. But I could see where at night that would be a time. Yeah,
I think that's interesting because I feel like mine is worse at night for sure. And one thing that I've done, and I liked, she has on this one of these page 275, just at the top in like big writing, when you write it down, your brain can relax. And I have done this for a while now, like a couple of years, where I use Google Tasks like religiously. So I always have to-do lists for myself. And a lot of the time I will like be trying to go to bed and it's like 11 p.m. And I go like, oh my God, did I remember to send that email? Or like, oh, like, I need to remember to reach out to whoever and whatever. And I won't be able to sleep until I know that I'm going to remember to do it, right? Because my fear is always like, well, if this is really important in this moment, then am I going to forget it? And then I've let somebody down or whatever the thought is. And so instead of going and doing the thing at that moment, because that's obviously not good for my sleep, I'll either send myself an email or I'll just give myself a task or set an alarm for the next day saying like, remember to call grandma or whatever it is, so that I can then just say, okay, brain, you've got this. It's going to happen tomorrow. There's nothing you can do about it right now anyways, but you're not going to forget that it's going to happen tomorrow. And then I'm So it's not so much a worry appointment in that like I'm not setting aside 15 minutes to worry about it. I'm allowing myself to not worry about it in the moment by scheduling time to do the thing that I'm worried about the next day. That's super helpful for like tangible things like emails or contacting people or a to-do list. Where I have a harder time with it is states of the world, where I have again, like probably OCD style obsession with like information. So like I remember when COVID first happened and we had every day at 2 p.m. our public health officer would be on TV watching or talking about the newest numbers. And I would just like constantly be diving into every single thing I could possibly read about what was happening in the pandemic. I listened to like a lot of political podcasts. That is a bit of a clusterfuck at the moment. And so again, it's the difference between being informed and being obsessed with is kind of similar with like avoiding and distracting. I'm trying to find a like balance between doing like continuously thinking about something and ruminating on it and like worrying about things that realistically I have no control over versus like saying like radical reality. Dave said this in the last episode. It was brilliant. This is the reality. I don't have to like it. I don't have to dislike it, but here we are. And accepting that so that I can then move forward. And like maybe I'm going to take this worry appointment thing a little bit more seriously about politics in the next little bit of just like, instead of keeping myself up at night worrying about what the hell is going on in the world, saying like, I can look this stuff up for 15 minutes tomorrow, but I can't spend all day listening to political podcasts or whatever it is. Kat, how does this resonate with you, this skill?
Yeah, so for me, like the perfect sweet spot for distracting is like it has to be something that I find a little bit difficult, but not so difficult that it goes into another useless spiral. So like I will find numbers because I'm dyscalculic, so I'll find some numbers and add them together, and that is kind of the level for me. So and I usually tend to need it when I'm in the car, usually like parked somewhere. So then I'll like add the numbers from registration plates together, and that works really well for me. The idea of the grief appointment kind of really resonates at the moment because I'm doing a lot of kind of therapy about stuff that happened when I was a child and stuff like that. So a lot of the day I'll be like getting triggered or having new memories and stuff like that, and I have like a time in the evening when I really tune into that and kind of connect and then sometimes write about it. So that's where that kind of fits for me at the moment. And I find it really useful to have that time because in the day I can kind of say to that part, like, yeah, you're totally valid, but it's not really appropriate for me to dive into that right now.
That's such a good example. So do you find like when you say you write about it, like journaling is helpful to kind of get those thoughts out and think about them in a way that's a little bit more productive?
Yeah, it kind of just puts it, I don't want to say like ducks in a row, but it kind of just puts it into order. Like, so it's less confusing and it's not just floating around being kind of vague distress. Like it's I know what it is. And that's where that helps. And yeah, I'll write it or I'll talk to someone about it. And it's the same thing. It's just putting it
awesome
into kind of a pattern.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool. Do other people have like Kat's example of like doing something that's hard but not too hard? Does anybody have examples of like what they do that might be beneficial for other people? I mean, they talk in this book about like writing lists, which I do love a list, but you know, trying to think of every fruit that you can think of and just like kind of going through that list. There's one that somebody taught me to help with sleeping that's very similar, like to help with kind of the rumination at sleep. I don't think it would matter if you did it during the day, but it's think of a word. So like elephant, for example, and now I'm going to make myself spell elephant, but then like, oh God, I'm so bad at spelling. I'm going to pick a better word, like trout, like the fish, Trout. And then when you get to the end of the word and you're like, okay, that is a T at the end, then I need to come up with another word that has T. So like true, TRUE. And then now that ends with an E. So now I'm going to do elephant, and I'm not going to spell elephant. Where was I? Elephant. Yeah. So then you just kind of do that over and over again until you fall asleep, which I do find helpful despite my lack of ability to spell. But are there other, I mean, swimming I also find helpful, like, you know, tasks where you're like, you can think about something else. Are there any other things that people find like particularly helpful for the distraction?
I do an alarm thing, kind of like a worry appointment, but not to worry, but I set a 5-minute alarm. I worked this out with my therapist that when I need to distract myself from those ruminating thoughts to what I change crafts all of the time because of ADHD. So whatever my current craft is, I'll do it for 5 minutes. I leave it sitting out in my living room table. So if it's a puzzle or diamond painting or coloring, I just take 5 minutes to just take my brain to that thing instead. And I think having the distress tolerance kits, I think we've talked about those a little bit, but like I have a handful of things in my purse, in my car, in my living room that are things I reach for when I start getting lost in the hole. So having something that affects any of your senses, you know, like have smell good things in there, squishmallows, fidget toys, and just kind of taking your brain to something physically in front of you will kind of help you escape the mental aspect.
Totally.
But yeah, I love the spelling thing. I'm going to use that. Yeah, and also the just kind of throwing yourself into doing something. I also have like a kit of stuff that I go to as well.
Yeah, I think I have a picture of it, your kit, in the video episode for the 2 episodes ago, or 1 episode ago, the smell one. I can't remember. I've been editing so many things. I can't keep track, but I do have it in there somewhere. It's in one of the video episodes. Yeah, I sometimes like even just talking to someone about something else is helpful. One thing, Heather, I wanted to add is like you talked about like the 5-minute like appointments to do stuff. One thing that I find, it's a little bit different, but just like in case this is helpful, I don't remember if we've talked about this before, but sometimes when things feel like super overwhelming and I'm like, I can't possibly do all of this stuff, I'll do like 15-minute appointments. So like I need to like do laundry for 15 minutes. Like I'm going to set a timer and then I'm going to do laundry for 15 minutes. And then usually by the end of that 15 minutes, I'm like, well, I might as well just finish. I only have like 10 minutes left. But that setting myself a like tangible amount of time is super helpful as well for those larger tasks that are really overwhelming. Shannon, how about you? Any like specific, distraction stuff you like doing?
I'm not great at the distraction stuff outside of home. When I'm like, apart from, I'm sorry, I've got a really loud bird in the background.
That's okay. It's perfect.
So like listening to bird sounds, looking for nature stuff, that's the kind of stuff if I'm out and about. If I'm at home, and I love TV series, binge watching a new series or something like that. But if I'm really dysregulated, something that I have done before is I might put something on and I know that I'm not okay enough to really take in the story, but I'll look for the B-roll shots in a series. So like just those little 5-second sections where they're doing an establishing shot and it's, showing you that they're at a police building or, and then, the main thing will happen, but then there'll be like a little shot of someone in the background or those things that build the story. So it's a way that I can still be relaxing and doing something that I like, but then rather than just letting the story play out and my mind just go wherever it's going to go, picking out those little things that are happening in the background, and it makes me feel like probably like I'm creative, oh, look, I can notice these things. And so instead of trying something that makes me feel like I'm not very good at this or I should be able to do this better, which is something that I do a lot and why I tend to steer away from crafts when I'm not okay, because I just get frustrated that I'm not good at that thing straight away. I think that kind of helps me go, lots of other people wouldn't notice that stuff. So it's kind of something that makes me build myself up at the same time rather than being hard on myself. I'm not very good at being kind to myself in those moments.
That's such a unique example. I really love that. I've never heard anybody talk about that before. No, but it's so cool. And like, I don't know if anybody watches Severance, but it's on right now. And like, there's so many little tiny like tidbits of information that you could get if you were paying that much attention to it, that even if you just spent like your whole episode thinking about like the lighting that they're using to film this scene, like they all kind of are telling you something without being blatant about it. And so being able to like really focus on those small pieces, I'm sure directors love people like you because I'm sure like a decision about B-roll or like whoever that background actor is takes a lot of effort, and like they've really thought it through, and most people just completely ignore all of the work that they've done to do that, which is really cool. I like that. Dave, what about yourself?
I don't know that I have a ton to add. I find that the things that work best for me are things where there's at least some level of having to do something that takes not too much skill, but like an amount of, that I'm sort of comfortable with. So for me, the things that work best are playing guitar and, I'll go shoot baskets in the park. Something where there's like some physical thing I have to do. I could see knitting or doing something craft wise if that was something that I, got into. I could see that working. I find that things where I'm passive just don't help and sometimes make it worse. So like for me, watching TV makes it worse. But also reading books makes it worse. I just find like my mind and sometimes it's like, I sort of snap out of it and I'll be like 3 pages on. I have no idea what I just read because my mind was just like cranking away at whatever I was ruminating about. So, I find doing dishes works for me. Something where it's like a task that is not too difficult that I'm not going to get frustrated with, but that it requires just enough focus that my mind doesn't have any room to go off onto some other tangent,
I love doing dishes. It's like one of those DBT things that like got brought up early on in DBT, and it is my favorite like household thing to do. Hate putting dishes away, but love doing the dishes. The TV thing that you brought up, last night we're watching a show, and like I am really bad with that, Dave, of just like watching a show and then like 5 minutes later being like, what is this show about? Like, I don't even understand. And so Aaron fell asleep in the middle of watching a show last night. And I was like, Aaron, you can't do this because who am I going to ask questions up to? Like when 2 minutes later, when I'm like, who's that? Why are they here? What just happened? Like I literally need somebody to like guide me through every TV show that I watched.
Well, I think the other thing that occurs to me is, doing those sorts of things for distraction in the past have been trouble because it's not enough to get undistracted. And so then, I wind up layering other not healthy strategies on top of it. So whether it's, using substances or binge eating or, some of those other things that like to try to like get up to the level where I'm out from under the ruminating. And so it's nice to know myself that it's better to pick something not like watching TV or reading a book because it doesn't end well for me.
Yeah, and she does talk about that you should be really careful about not choosing distractions that are compulsions or addiction too, right? Because it can be so easy to be like, well, I'm just going to do this to distract myself. And it's like, I mean, I feel like exercise is probably a great one for a lot of people. It's like, that's a great distraction, but there's also a point at which it becomes unhealthy how much you're exercising. So if that is something that like has been problematic for you in the past, probably not the best option for distraction. But yeah, I think that's a really good point to like be cognizant of. I'm curious. I felt like it was a bit of a weird. Do you know what I'm going to talk about, Dave?
Yeah, I don't understand why this is in chapter, the dating plan, other than the fact that it's sort of
like the story
with the story. But I have no idea why this is in here.
No, me neither. So for context, for those of you who aren't reading the book, there's, and if you are reading the book, it's page 282, 283. I think that's it. 282, 283. Very, 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 very detailed, which is actually unlike a lot of the stuff in this book, which is very like image focused, not so much written focused. A dating plan. It's clarifying your dating goals, creating a dating timeline, choosing who you want to date. And it just seems like so random. Like, I'm sure that it's helpful, but I was just like, what does this have to do with pushing away or distracting? If anything, this actually seems like a bigger problem to me, in that, like, kind of like what Kat was saying about the future faking, right? Of like, these are all of the things that I want to see happen in 8 months with this relationship. And it's like, how is that beneficial to not ruminating about something? Yeah. So Dave, I'm glad that you also caught that, because I was like, what? Why is this? I was trying to remind myself. Anybody did this resonate with anyone? Like, did this make sense to anyone?
It didn't make sense to me in context to this. Well, obviously, the dating stuff in the story. But as I went through it, I was like, every person who goes to high school should get this in their welcome pack as they go into high school.
Fair.
I was like, if I had this through my teen years, it would have been so helpful. Not so helpful now that I'm,
Married
got a partner and kids and all that kind of stuff. But as a teenager, some of this stuff would have been so great.
Yeah. I don't think that it's a bad resource. I'm just confused about the placement. Yeah. But I mean, I think that in some ways it's kind of helpful, even like the must-haves. What would you like? What are like absolutely no? What can you live without? But you, whatever. Like, yeah, all good things to know. Although I do think that like humans in relationships are so unique that you're unlikely to find somebody that meets all of these. And I think there's also that component of dating where sometimes people are too obsessed with like, this person needs to be absolutely perfect, and like there is no such thing as an absolutely perfect person. But the dating timeline was kind of interesting, to not get like obsessed with someone, because it's talking about like during the first month, like, limit texting to logistics and occasional friendly check-ins. Don't do like daily good morning, good night stuff. See each other in person once a week. But like that part I understand in terms of not ending up with like an obsession or a favorite person situation. Still kind of weird placement. Heather, you had something to say on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that I kind of had, when I read through that page specifically, 282, was almost like a plan to not get a favorite person and to like things, how to look back and be like, okay, it's not normal to do this quickly, or remember when I was in Wise Mind, this is what I wanted on this timeline. And I also think that the skills that we were just talking about with the favorite person thing, for me, the only way to, I personally think I prevented for the first time, prevented a favorite person situation recently. So I'm all about that right now.
How?
I'm trying. It's like I'm trying to piece that together still. I just know that was getting there with someone that I met in the lifestyle, which is what we kind of call like the swinging community. And it was a friend situation too, not even like a relationship, but it was like I just clicked with this person, felt like they were all about me. I was all about them, so I was feeding into it. And this is the first time that I've realized it was happening after knowing what it was. Like I didn't know what a favorite person was to someone with BPD. So it's like just having that knowledge and then starting these skills made me try to look for one. I didn't really know what skill to use, but I would be like, okay, this isn't normal behavior. You're getting obsessed. And I kind of reel it in, and I'm really not sure exactly what all skills I used, but just having the awareness really changed something to let me know I was doing it. Whereas all the other times in my life, they're just until I was hurt at the end of it because I wasn't good enough or whatever, then I didn't realize it was even a thing.
Well, it feels so good. That's the problem.
It does.
It feels incredible.
That was what makes it hard to battle too, is because I'm like, well, but they really like me. But I'm still continuing a friendship with that person now, and we've become great friends, and I've kept that, like, because it's valuable to me, I've been able to not let it go there because I understand that it's toxic.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like people that are your favorite person shouldn't be in your life, right? It's not getting to the point of obsession and then having to like either have it disappear or ruin your life in other ways, right? Yeah, the favorite person thing is rough. Rough. Okay. Any last thoughts on the pushing away and distracting skills that anybody wanted to share?
Yeah, can I just say one more thing? Heather,
Mm-hmm.
I really love what you just said, and I think there's also there's another side of that coin, which is that I think that, speaking for myself, but also I think having heard a lot of people with BPD talk, I think it's a common experience, not only to attach ourselves in a way to someone who, is like a perfectly good person. I just get like obsessed with them, but also like to attach ourselves to people who are not nice people, who are abusive, who are taking advantage, who are willing to run with that attachment and then mistreat us. And I think that this is a worthwhile exercise before generally looking for a relationship, in the sense of just like giving myself permission to think about what's before an actual person is in front of me, and I have to be like, oh my god, if I say I'm not okay with this, then they're gonna leave. It's like just planning ahead and saying like, no, like if this person who I meet out there, this fictional person, if they do this or that, I'm really not okay with that. And then when I get in those situations, then hopefully what happens is there, because I've already thought about it, it's easier and I don't get sort of ambushed by, there's this person abusing me, but also if I push them away, then I'm going to be alone forever. And so I need to put up with this if I have some lines. And it doesn't mean that down the road, like I have to follow that line just because I wrote it down. That it has to be that way. But it does mean that I'm not going to be unprepared. I have so recently. I went on a date for the first time in decades, and putting everything else aside about it, so she walked in to this coffee shop, and like the very first thing that happened was I was like, how was your weekend? And she was like, oh, it was fine. She was like chaperoning her kids' class up at a theme park or something, and she was like, oh, and this one kid who was part of my group was a total borderline. And I was like, and here's the thing,
Dave, you did not tell me that part. When I asked you how it went,
I
you
sort
did
of
not
thought about it, because here's the thing, like having done this, not having done this particularly, but having looked at this and having done some thinking on my own about like what's a line, what's not a line. In some ways, I realized like just her saying that wasn't really a line, because I felt confident that it's like, if this is someone who I connect with otherwise, and get the sense that she feels the same way, I think that number one, I could be myself, and then we could have a talk about it, and it would be fine. And if it wasn't fine, I would pick up on that ahead of time, and I would be comfortable walking away before it would become an issue. And so it didn't cross a line, but I do think that if I hadn't done any thinking about it at all, I might have sort of freaked out, or like I was able to do the rest of the date with an open mind, because I'd thought about it ahead of time, and it wasn't like, oh my god, she just said that she had a problem with people with borderline. I'm gonna just check out now and not and decide that this isn't gonna work because of that. So just one plug for doing an exercise like this, or at least doing some thinking about stuff like this.
Dave, what are the chances? That's hysterical. Especially, like, honestly, as a woman dating, you hear that a lot. Oh, like my ex was borderline, blah, 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 blah. You hear that all the time. But in that context is like so random. Like, I don't know, like the other women on here, but like I've definitely heard that a million times, like online dating. But just to like have that randomly come up is so strange.
It was literally the first thing that happened. And her dad was a psychiatrist, and her mom was a licensed clinical social worker. So like, I don't.
Oh God.
And honestly, you're out here doing work for us, Dave, because you didn't handle it like a borderline.
Yes.
And because when you first said it, I was like, so you left. But because I would have been like, how dare you? Because we're not crazy. And then I would have acted crazy and left.
Yeah.
So you like are helping with that stigma by using your skills and being like, this doesn't have to be, you don't have to react in the stereotypical way that everyone already views us. So good job. Thank you.
Truly.
It was really funny.
Can't believe that was not the first. I literally texted Dave after the date and said, hey, how'd it go? And that was not what came up. And I can't believe.
That's impressive.
That's so funny
about it, because it was literally it was like then another 2 hours happened. And so I'd sort of forgotten about it. Yeah,
fair. Well, it's okay. It's way more funny that it's now recorded. Any other thoughts on the distract pushing away before we end?
Yeah, I just wanted to dive in because, I massively benefit from like spending time with the dogs and the rats and the chinchilla and the rabbit and everybody. And I totally forget about that. And I'm the first person to be guilty of being like, oh, I feel crap, so I'm not going to hang out with them. Whereas if I go and spend time with them, it always makes me feel better, and it always takes me out of that space of kind of just being stuck in my head.
To wrap up, though, I just wanted to say one random announcement that I probably should have said at the beginning of this episode. If you reach out on like Spotify or Apple through the like send a text to the podcaster or whatever thing, love that. That's amazing. I found out recently I actually can't respond to you, which is very annoying. So if you're the person who reached out and asked where they could buy the book that we're going through, it's linked in the show notes as well, so you can just click there. You can also just find it by Googling DBT for Life by Diana Partington. Sorry that I couldn't respond to your message. That doesn't, like, those usually don't come through very often. It's usually just through like Instagram and whatever, which is easier. But yeah, I was surprised that I was not able to respond. That was kind of a weird one. Thank you so much for listening to the Superfeeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you'd like to learn more about the Superfeeler podcast, share your story, or participate in the Superfeelers Club, which is our peer support group, it's totally free, virtual, and open to anyone who experiences intense emotions or has borderline personality disorder, please check out the link in our show notes or go to laurieedmondson.com. If you would like to support the show, we would very much appreciate it. There's an option to do monthly small donations at whatever denomination you'd like, and you get bonus content, extra resources, and extra connection to me throughout. That can be found on patreon.com/superfeeler, or again in the notes below. Thanks again, and have a great day.